This is Chapter 3 of The Wolf's Promise, written by Alexi Hartwood. Snow has a sound when it's coming in sideways. It isn't quiet. It isn't soft. It's a constant hiss against the windshield, a white static that makes the world feel smaller than it should be. Pine Hollow had been giving me weather all week like it was a personality trait, but this was something else. This was Montana reminding me I was a visitor. My phone buzzed in the cup holder for the third time in 10 minutes. Mom, you okay? Mom, call me when you can. Mom, please. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't love her. Because if I answered, I'd have to say out loud that I'd chosen to come here alone. That I'd chosen a rental cabin at the edge of a town small enough to feel like a rumor. That I'd chosen quiet over familiar. And because the road was getting worse. The highway out here wasn't a highway the way I thought of one. It was 2 lanes, a shoulder that disappeared under drifts, and a line of dark pines that leaned in like eavesdroppers. The plows had come through earlier. I could tell by the ridges of packed snow, but the wind was undoing their work in real time. The heater blew hard and loud. The wipers squeaked. The rental SUV made a patient complaining noise every time I asked it to go a little faster than it wanted. I should have turned around. I told myself I was only going into town for supplies. Batteries, a better ice scraper, something that wasn't instant oatmeal. I told myself it was practical. The truth was, the cabin had started to feel like a snow globe someone was shaking, and I needed proof that the rest of the world still existed. A gust hit the side of the SUV. The steering wheel tugged in my hands. I tightened my grip and stared at the faint tracks ahead, willing the lane lines to appear like a promise. The next curve came up too fast. The road dipped and shaded under a stand of trees, the kind of place sunlight didn't reach even on good days. I eased off the gas the way you're supposed to, the way every winter driving article tells you to, and the SUV instantly felt light, like it didn't have enough weight to stay honest. Black ice. I didn't see it. I felt it. The tires lost their argument with the road, and the world turned sideways. My stomach lifted into my throat. The steering wheel went loose, and then heavy, and then loose again. No. I remembered some long ago lesson. Don't slam the brakes. Steer into it. Stay calm. I did none of those things. I hit the brakes, and the SUV spun like it was on a lazy Susan. Snow exploded across the windshield. The trees became streaks. The shoulder rushed toward me. My hands shook. My heart hammered. The cabin, the town, my careful plan, everything narrowed down to the simple, stupid fact that I was going to end up in a ditch, alone, in a storm, and nobody would find me because nobody knew where I was. The SUV lurched. The back end clipped something, snowbank maybe, and the impact shoved the car straight again, hard enough to make my teeth click. The tires caught. The steering wheel fought back. I came to a stop half on the shoulder, half in the lane, hazards blinking, breath loud in my ears. For a full second, I just sat there with my forehead almost touching the wheel, listening to the engine idle like nothing had happened. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My whole body felt liquid, like my bones had turned to something warm and useless. My chest heaved, and I realized I was making a sound. Not crying exactly, but a thin, high noise that was the offspring of a laugh and a sob. Then I looked up. A set of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, cutting through the white. Oh, God. I fumbled for the gear shift. My fingers were clumsy in my gloves. The SUV refused to move, like it was offended by my earlier panic. I tapped the gas, and the tires spun on ice, the car shuddering in place. The headlights got closer. I turned my head in time to see a dark truck easing up behind me, slow and controlled, like the driver wasn't surprised to find me sideways on the shoulder. The truck stopped at an angle, blocking the lane, hazards flashing. A door opened. A man stepped out into the storm like he belonged in it. He was tall. That was my first thought, useless and immediate. Tall and broad-shouldered in a heavy coat, hood up, face half-shadowed by the blowing snow. He moved with the kind of balance you only get when you've lived with winter your whole life. No hesitation, no slip. His boots hit the packed snow like they'd been calibrated for this surface. He reached my driver's side window and tapped once, firm but not aggressive. I cracked it, and cold air knifed in. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low, roughened by the wind. Not gentle, not harsh, just certain. "No," I said too fast. "No, I just—" My words turned into a breathy laugh that came out wrong, like I was trying to make the situation smaller. He didn't laugh back. He looked past me, taking in the angle of the SUV, the spinning tires, the thin line of visibility. His gaze moved with a precision that felt almost clinical, like he was reading the road the way a mechanic reads an engine. "You're on ice," he said, like I hadn't noticed. "I figured that out, yeah." His eyes came back to mine, close enough now that I could see them through the crack in the window. Pale, almost gray, steady in a way that made my pulse do something complicated. Not warm, not cold, just present, like he was fully in this moment and nowhere else. His gaze flicked to my hands on the wheel. "Put it in neutral." "What?" "Neutral," he repeated, the way you'd repeat something to a child, not unkindly. Foot off the brake. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me not to do that. But the way he said it, calm, certain, like the outcome was already decided, made me move before I could argue. The SUV shifted, the brake released, the car rocked slightly. "Okay," he said. "Now turn the wheels straight." I did. He stepped back from the window. "Stay in the car. Don't touch the gas." He didn't wait for agreement. He walked to the front of my SUV, snow collecting on his shoulders, and crouched near the front tire. I watched, confused, as he shoved his gloved hands into the snowbank at the edge of the shoulder and pulled out something dark. A chunk of gravel, maybe, or a strip of rubber mat. I couldn't tell. He wedged it in front of the tire, then moved to the other side and did the same. His hands were large. That was the kind of detail I noticed, because I was sitting in a car trying not to hyperventilate. Large hands, confident movements, no wasted energy. He handled the situation with the same unthinking competence that some men brought to fixing a leaky faucet. Except this wasn't a faucet. This was a stranger's car on a frozen highway in a storm, and he was on his knees in the snow like it was nothing. He stood, looked at me through the windshield, and motioned with one hand. I put my foot lightly on the gas like it was a live wire. The tires spun once, then caught. The SUV jolted forward, slow and reluctant, and then it was moving, climbing out of the shallow drift back onto the packed track of the lane. Relief hit me so hard, it made my eyes sting. I stopped again, properly on the road, hazards still flashing. The man approached the window a second time, close enough now that I could see his face. Dark hair, cut short enough that the wind didn't move it. A short beard, neatly kept, shadowing a jaw that looked like it had opinions. Pale eyes that read as gray in the stormlight, set under brows that were drawn slightly together. Not frowning, just focused. Like his default expression was assessment. He looked like the kind of man who never smiled for photos because he didn't see the point. He looked like the kind of man who could be standing in a blizzard with snow on his shoulders and not seen cold. He looked at me like he was deciding whether I was going to do something stupid again. "Thank you," I said. My voice came out small. He nodded once. "You're lucky." Lucky doesn't feel like the right word. "It's the right word," he said. A strange thing to say, but he said it with a kind of flat seriousness that made me swallow my reply. Like he meant something more than the road. Like he was weighing a truth I couldn't see yet. "You heading into town?" he asked. "Yes, I was." His gaze went to the road ahead. The wind shoved snow across it in sheets. A tree somewhere groaned under the weight of ice. "Storm's moving fast." "I can handle it," I lied. He looked back at me. The look held, steady and unblinking. Not a challenge, a warning without drama. Like he had decided to tell me the truth and wasn't interested in whether I liked it. I felt my cheeks heat. The warmth spread down my neck, and I hated it. Hated that a stranger's steady gaze could do that to me when I was supposed to be past the point of caring what men thought. "Okay," I said, softer. "Maybe I can't." "Turn around," he said. "Go back. I need supplies. There will be other days." I hated that he was right. I hated that he was right, and that it made me feel like a child being told to come inside because the streetlights were on. I also hated the way my pulse had steadied because he was here. Like his presence had done something to the physics of my nervous system. Like fear had met an equal force and paused. I nodded. "Okay, I'll go back." "Good." He didn't say "good girl." Thank God. Because if he had, I would have told him to shove his truck into the ditch for me. But he didn't. He just watched me with those gray eyes until my hands stopped shaking. "What's your name?" I asked before I could stop myself. He hesitated. The pause was brief, a second maybe, but I felt it. Like a name wasn't a casual thing out here. Like giving it cost something. "Silas," he said finally. The name landed heavy. Old. Solid. The kind of name that belonged to someone's grandfather, or to a man who could stand in a snowstorm and look like he'd been born in one. "Tessa," I said. He held my gaze for a beat. Tessa. Just my name. No commentary, no warmth. But the way he said it, low, deliberate, like he was filing it somewhere important, made something shift in my chest. Then he stepped back into the storm. He walked to his truck, got in, and waited with his hazards on until I put my SUV in gear and slowly, carefully, started to turn around. In my rearview mirror, his headlights stayed behind me like a guardrail. He followed me. Not close, just present. A steady distance back, maintaining the buffer, never pushing, never falling behind. He followed me all the way to the Miller Road turnoff, and then his truck slowed, and I turned, and his headlights disappeared behind the snowbanks. I drove the rest of the way to the cabin with my heart doing something I couldn't name. When I parked and turned off the engine, I sat there. Just sat. My hands were still trembling, but the trembling had shifted frequency. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the aftermath of fear. The adrenaline dissolving into something else, something warm and unsettled. I got out and walked around to the passenger side to get my bag. There was a blanket on the seat. A gray wool blanket, folded once, sitting on the passenger seat like it had always been there. Except it hadn't. I was certain of that. I would have noticed a blanket. I picked it up. It was heavy, warm from wherever it had been stored, and it smelled like wood smoke and something clean. Soap, maybe. Pine. A trace of something I couldn't name that made me inhale again without deciding to. I stood there in the snow, holding a stranger's blanket, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not a lot, not enough to be dramatic about. Just a hairline fracture in the wall I'd spent months building. Someone had thought about my comfort. Not my schedule, not my productivity, not what I could do for them. My comfort. He had put a blanket in my car in case I got cold on the way home. I carried it inside and draped it over the back of the couch. Then I made tea and sat by the fire and thought about gray eyes and steady voices and the specific weight of a name said once, carefully, like it mattered. Silas. I didn't know his last name. I didn't know what he did or where he lived or why he'd been on that highway at that exact moment. But I knew his hands were sure. And I knew his voice could make a command sound like a gift. And I knew that he'd followed me home and put a blanket in my car and driven away without asking for anything. The name sat in my mind like a new bruise, not painful enough to avoid, just present enough that I kept pressing it. Silas. I fell asleep on the couch that night, wrapped in his blanket, and didn't check the locks.